Guys, 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 guys. After actual years of waiting, the day that I and many other people have been looking towards has arrived. Mephiles is back in a new Sonic game. He's back. He's back. He's... Okay, I've calmed down a little bit. As exciting as Mephiles returning is, there are a few things that I want to mention about this trailer and some of the implications it has for this game. This was absolutely packed with new information about the overall story of Shadow Generations, as it should be. It is a story trailer after all. So let's take a look. Starting out, I think that memories are going to play an extremely important role in Shadow's story. Other than just being the opening bit with Gerald and Maria, we might be seeing more of Shadow's past thanks to the desolation caused by the Time Meter. I know that the Shadow anime is going to be doing that as well, but I wouldn't be surprised if we got some extra cutscenes displaying Shadow's past front and center. Next, I want to talk about the levels. I think that this game is going to follow a very similar formula to Sonic's story in Generations, having 3 levels in an area, with 1 rival battle and 1 boss battle in each of them. There also could be sub-games around the levels like there are in Sonic's story. The hub world itself looks much prettier and a lot more open than the one in Sonic's story, which I do really like. But at the same time it makes me a little sad because I have a feeling if Sonic's story is entirely unchanged, like it seems, it'll be incredibly inferior to Shadow's story. As for the levels, obviously I can't guess what all of them will be, but I do have a few ideas. I think the first 3 levels will largely be focused on Sonic Adventure 2, just like how the first 3 levels of Sonic's story were based around Classic Sonic. I think it's more likely that the first level will be Radical Highway. It's by far the one we've seen the most, and it's the first level in the series where Shadow is actually playable. I think each level in the game will have 2 acts, the first one being relatively normal and the second being completely distorted. If I had to guess, I'd say the next level is more likely to be White Jungle. Sorry to all of my Pumpkin Hill fans, White Jungle has a lot more going on with it and has a story that's a lot more significant than just Shadow chasing Tails around. While the undistorted version of the act would be cool, I could see the distorted version of it being trauma-inducing. Remember, White Jungle is basically a constant panic attack for Shadow as he runs through to save Rouge, in hope that he doesn't repeat his failures on the arc. I think it's clear that the last stage of the first 3 will be the arc itself. There's not too much to say about it, but there's one thing that's interesting. In one trailer we can see Omega standing in front of a level entrance gate. Perhaps Shadow will be freeing his friends in a similar way to Sonic, but instead of freeing a character every level, it'll be every era. Omega could participate in some of the sub-games like the characters in Sonic's story do. So what about the bosses in the first area? Well, one of the rival battles has already been confirmed, and I have a pretty good idea of what the other one will be, but I'm not too sure about this first one. If I had to guess, I think it'll be either Emerald or Sonic. Both would make sense. Emerald has a very big presence in the animation, so that could be leading up to his appearance in the game. But if not, Sonic being the first rival battle would work well too, especially if White Jungle is one of the first levels. The first boss is almost confirmed to be the Bio-Lizard, and I think it's the perfect pick for the Sonic Adventure 2 level pack. This will probably also be the last hurdle that Shadow has to go through before being able to meet up with Gerald and Maria again, because at the end of the trailer it does look like they're separated. Perhaps after this we'll get the Doom Surf and be able to cross the water over to them. As for the second level pack, this one will probably be about the levels leading up to Generations. The first one will likely be Rail Canyon. It definitely feels like the most Shadow level in Sonic Heroes, and it was seen in the trailer. I'm both excited and terrified to see what the distorted version of this level will look like, because ever since Lost World I've had PTSD from rail mechanics. The next level will likely be something from Shadow 05. It could be the Doom Comet, but I'm not entirely sure, and I have ideas about that which I'll get back to. Honestly, I could see Westopolis or Central City here instead. They're both pretty fun levels, and I could see a lot being done with them in Shadow Generations. The final level in the second area will undoubtedly be Kingdom Valley. This was my absolute favorite level from Sonic 06, so I'm really glad it's making a comeback in Shadow Generations. I can tell that this is going to be one of the best levels in the game, which is really cool because it's finally putting a more positive light on the most hated Sonic game. And now for the rival battle. Mephiles will be returning for the first time in 18 years. Even though I can't see this leading to anything more than just a boss fight, I'm incredibly happy that he's back. God, I've wanted this for a long time, and I really hope that Sonic Team will do his already incredible fight justice in Generations. I won't theorize too much about what it'll be because I want to see it for myself, but I can tell it's going to be great. As for the boss, it's funny because this second area is the only one that I'm pretty certain about both fights in. I'm almost 100% sure that Metal Overlord will be the boss fight of this area. His fight is the one we know the most about, and it looks really, really good. I could see Shadow picking up the Doom Morph after this fight, since it seems to only be used in late game areas. Now for the third area. I have a pretty good idea for what the other two levels are, but as for this one, I have no idea. This seems to be about the future, and will have only levels after Sonic Generations in the timeline. We already know we'll be getting levels from Forces and Frontiers, but the only two options before those games for the first level are Lost World and Sonic Boom. Sonic Boom has been lobotomized from everyone's memory because no one wants to admit it was ever a Sonic game, so we can cross that one off the list. As for Lost World, maybe? It would be weird because we never see Shadow in the game, but he's also never on Chaos Island. It's also possible that we'll just get 2 Forces levels. We already know that Sunset Heights from Forces is going to be in the game from the most recent trailer, and it's already doing way more with the new Death Egg robots than Forces ever did. This makes me incredibly happy because one thing I'm starting to notice about Shadow Generations is that it's not just a game about celebration, but also about redemption. It's taking the good qualities that weren't used to their full potential from other games and redeeming them in this game, which I think is really, really cool. As for the last level, you already know what it is, so I don't even have to say it. It's Chaos Island. This honestly surprised me. I had thought of a potential inclusion of Frontiers, but it seemed more like a pipe dream fantasy than something that can actually happen. But here we are. It's a little weird, especially since Shadow is nowhere to be found in Frontiers, but I'm not complaining. Even though I doubt this will be anywhere near as good as Chaos Island is in Frontiers, I still think it's going to be a very fun level. And if it does end up being the last level in the game, then I think it's a good pick. At least it's much more fitting than Planet Wisp. I'm also pretty certain about the rival battle in this area. Remember what I said about Redemption? Now that we know for sure that Mephiles is going to be a rival boss, I'm almost positive that Infinite is going to be the rival battle of this area. He has 0 good boss fights in his debut game, so giving him one here would actually make him a little bit cooler. Plus, the Black Doom distortion would probably mix well with his Phantom Ruby distortion. Now, as for the boss fight in this area, I have no fucking idea. A lot of people are saying it could be Knight, but honestly I don't think so. It would be really weird to bring him back right after Frontiers, especially since no matter how Sonic Team does it with Shadow, it's almost guaranteed to be underwhelming. What about Fortress then? That Guardian could use some love, but why? Fortress has barely any connection to Shadow. Well, what if there's a Lost World level and the boss is Zavok? This game seems to be delivering on all the empty promises from Forces, so maybe he'll be a boss. I mean, I guess? But that's... I don't know. All in all, I think it's most likely going to be Knight, but I have no way to be sure. It's also possible that I was entirely wrong about there being 3 levels per area, and that there were actually 2. Side note, one thing I really like about the levels is the level clear zone. Instead of it just being a signpost or a giant ring, it's Black Bull. I find it funny that at the end of every level, your final challenge is just to beat the shit out of Black Bull, because that stupid-ass boss deserves it. Finally, I should talk about the egg. Whatever form Black Doom is festering in the egg, it seems to be feeding off of Shadow's powers. I think it'll start out just looking like a weird stone egg with Black Doom's eyes on it, but as time goes on, it'll start to grow tentacles. It also seems like the world will be getting more deranged as it advances, turning the sky red just before Shadow flies off to Black Doom to face him. Now there's one more thing I want to talk about before I go. Time Eater is shown a lot in the trailers, and honestly, with how good this game looks, and how much it's playing up Time Eater, I don't think I'd be satisfied if it was entirely unchanged. Some people are suggesting that there will be a final story after Sonic and Shadow's campaigns for Black Doom and Time Eater fuse, and while that would be really cool, I'm not entirely sure if it would go that far, though that would be a good place to have a fusion level of the Black Comet at the end of time. Even if there isn't a final story, I would at least like for Time Eater's fight to be changed in some ways. I know I put it pretty high on my boss ranking video, but in that video it was entirely carried by the 3DS version, so I really hope they'll improve the final boss, because right now it's the absolute worst fight in the game. So yeah, overall, this game looks a lot better than I initially gave it credit for. I do feel a little bad about ignoring it at first because it looks incredibly good, and that's not just because Mephiles is here. Overall, I'm glad they're revisiting Sonic Generations, and if this does well, I hope this will inspire Sega to let Sonic Team revisit some other games as well. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and subscribe. Now would be a good time to do so, because I have some big things coming very soon on this channel.